Hello, everybody, and welcome back to episode 5 of Shell by Shell, which is a series where we go through Hack the Box's starting point machines, and you go from no knowledge in ethical hacking and offensive security to having a solid baseline and being confident in your ethical hacking journey. Like I said, today's episode 5, and we're going to be taking on the appointment machine from Hack the Box. And keep in mind, we are starting tier 1 today. So the last 4 episodes were tier 0, which is more of a foundational, super basic. And now we're in tier 1. So some of the attacks are going to start to ramp up in complexity, and we're going to start to see some new topics. As I mentioned, today we're going to be doing appointment, and I've already started my VPN file. So if you're following along, make sure you do sudo open VPN and then a link to your starting point VPN file. As a reminder, if you see initialization sequence complete, that's how you know you are good to go. I also already started the sequence here, or the instance of our target machine, and we have our IP, which is 10.129.225.179. Going over to terminal or desktop 1 here, I'm going to open a new terminal, and I've already made a directory called Hack the Box starting point tier 1 appointment, and we're going to run our nmap scan. So I'll do -a -t4 RIP and then output into an nmap.txt format. As a reminder, this -a flag stands for all scans, so this includes operating system information, scanning scripts, and also scanning versions. So this includes I'm not sure what let's see actually, because I'm curious now. Let's see what the OS is. -o. Okay, so this -a is a combination of -o, -sc, and -sv. And if I cat that to nmap.txt, we can see our command here once again, which is right here. So -a, which I just mentioned, so -o, -sc, and -sv, -t4, which is a timing thing. So on a scale from 1 to 5, how fast do we want to make this scan? And T4 is relatively quickly and not that stealthy. And then we're outputting into an nmap.txt format. Looking at our nmap scan, we have only one port open, which is 80. So this is running HTTP, and then remember this service and version, mostly the version here. It's running Apache HTTP 2.4.38. This is what we get from our -sv flag. Down here is the OS information, so we know it's running Linux on a Debian distribution. And that's pretty much all we're seeing here. So with 80 only being open, this looks like a pretty simple and straightforward box. Let's just connect to the IP. We'll open Firefox and put the IP as the URL and see where it takes us. So it looks like it is just a login page here. I'm going to press Control U in order to look at the source code. So whenever you're faced with a login page, there's a lot of different options and checklist items you can go through. One of the first I always do is looking at the source code, seeing if there's any comments or any hints that will give us clues as to what the username could be, what the password could be, anything like that. And looking at this, we don't really see much. There's one JavaScript file, so I'm going to right click, click inspect, go to debugger, and then check out this JavaScript file and see if there's anything here. Validate input. Nothing really here. This all looks somewhat default in the sense where I'm not going to overly investigate that code and try to dig something from it. But there's really nothing that we have to go off of. So we have no username, we have no passwords. And that, like I said, there's a lot of checklist items you can go through. But the first thing I always like to do is default credentials. But since we don't know what applications it is, maybe if I recognize the logo, I could search up default credentials. But a common one is always just going to be admin. If I click login, we see there's really no message. We could investigate this further in Burp Suite. So Burp Suite is a tool that we can use to intercept proxy traffic, intercept and act as a proxy for any traffic. So we can send a request, we can intercept it, analyze it, and forward it on to see what requests are being made and how they're being made. I'm going to go to the proxy tab here. I'm going to flip on intercept, and then I have a extension on my Firefox called Foxy Proxy, and I'm going to switch to the burp setting, and we're going to go more in depth on Burp Suite at a later date. At this point in the series, it's not necessary that you do this and try to follow along, because this isn't going to be the path we're looking for. It's going to be helpful to understand the thought process, but for now, it's not crucial to follow along here and configure Burp Suite. But let's do that same credential. I'll do admin password this time. I'll click login, and we see here it gets intercepted. And so we're making a post request to just the home endpoint, and then we have two parameters, username and password. Let's forward that on, flip intercept off, and then turn off our burp proxy. If you go to HTTP history, we can see in more depth what we're looking at, and you see on the right side, this is what we were looking at earlier with the embedded HTML. So yeah, we don't really have a ton to go off of. Moving down the checklist of things I would try, I could try something here like starting to put random characters in the username or password field to see how the server responds. Ethical hacking and doing web app is a lot about tricking the server into doing something it's not intended. So if we can make the server throw errors or throw 500s, then we're going in the right direction. So the first thing I like to try is just a single quote. This is not in the repeater, so if we click this, press Control R, it'll send it to the repeater. So now we can forward and we can edit this request and forward it on as many times as we'd like. So I'll just do admin with a quote at the end and see what happens. We get a 200 OK. So nothing here. What if I add a hash? 200 OK again. All right. And we see actually we are managed to authenticate and get in. So you may be wondering, well, what the heck just happened? Why was that able to authenticate us? So let's try, it was clearly the hash here. So if I go back to the single quote and scroll all the way down, we see that we don't have any flag. But let's see if I get rid of the single quote, add the hash, and we see it's nothing happens either. So it's the combination of a single quote and a hash that allows us to authenticate and grab our flag. And just to prove that it's not a Burp Suite thing, we can do that here. So if I admin, you don't have to do admin. If you just do single quote hash, and then I'll just type in random stuff here, click login, or maybe I do need admin. Hash, admin, and we get our flag and we get authenticated to the website. So you may be wondering, what just happened? Why did that work? Well, this vulnerability is what's called SQL injection. SQL is a structured query language, and it's a database language. So this backend, the front end of this website is what we saw here. It's the login page. This is the front end, right? So the HTML, the CSS, the JavaScript. This is front end stuff. The back end, however, is running what's known as SQL, structured query language, which is a database which contains the usernames, the passwords, and any other information that this website may need to store. I have a example.sql of what this login form may look like. So if I do code on example.sql, it's going to open a VSCode terminal for us, and I'll also close Burp Suite. And we have some examples here. So what could be running on the back end is something like this. So this is a SQL statement. So it says select everything from the users table where username equals our input and password equals our input. So in these inputs is where we just saw on the login form, right? Username and password. These are where the inputs are. So as soon as we enter stuff, our query then turns into select everything from users where username equals admin and password equals password123. This is how it's able to authenticate us. So if it goes and searches out into the database and it finds like, hey, there is a username called admin and its password is password123, it'll tell the web page, okay, good to go. You can authenticate this person. However, we can do something called SQL injection. SQL injection is manipulating this code here, this line, into doing something that's not intended and authenticating us even if we don't know the credentials. That's just one example of what SQL injection can do. But you're essentially just manipulating the SQL statement and making it do something unintended. This is a very common SQL statement. Single quote or 1 equals 1 with a hash at the end. Our payload here was admin, like this. So it's just admin with a single quote and a hash. So this is our payload, but you may be wondering why it works. So this is it in practice. We take that same statement from earlier and we throw in our payload. I'll change it to admin. For record, for the context of why this works, the big thing here is the hash. The hash in SQL is a comment. Okay, so remember that. The hash in SQL is a comment. And for other query languages and database languages, the comment is different. So even here in this VS Code terminal, the dash dash is a comment. There's a double line like this, that's a comment. There's a mix of the two. So you'll just have to do some open source intelligence depending on the database language that it's running. But for the point of this example and for the box, the hash here is what is running, is what represents a comment in SQL. So taking that into practice, we have select everything from users where username equals, and this is our input. So our input is single quote admin and then hash. Now remember, the hash is a comment, so everything else in this line gets commented out. So all that's authenticating now, or all that's being read by the database is select everything from users where username equals admin. That's all it's doing, because the rest of this line gets commented out and we close. The important thing here is the single quote. So this single quote actually closes out these quotes. So it terminates the input quotes and allows us to break out of those input quotes, which is why when we add this hash at the end, it comments out the rest of the line. So this is our new line. Our new line is select all from users where username equals admin. So obviously in this database, there is a username called admin, and that's why we're able to authenticate. This statement is now true. Okay, there is a username called admin, and it is true, which means we are authenticated and we are able to access the site. So that was a really quick and really baseline level breakdown of what SQL injection is. It gets a lot more complex than this, but the main idea is taking a payload like this and inserting it into a SQL statement like this and being able to manipulate the payload to do it what we want. In this case, we wanted to authenticate to the web page, and by commenting out the rest of the line and breaking out of the input terminal, we are able to do that. And just to show us again, we were able to just get our congratulations and our flag. So that was it. It's a very quick box, but this is crucial in understanding how SQL works and also SQL injection. And whenever you hear something about sanitizing user input, this is exactly what it means. If you don't sanitize user input, something like this could happen, and you can have people get access to your web page and have malicious actors get access to your web page without any authentication whatsoever. This is why sanitizing input is so crucial. Let's go back to our fourth desktop here and answer some questions about this box appointment. Task 1, what does SQL stand for? That is Structured Query Language. What's one of the most common types of SQL vulnerabilities? This is what we just performed, which is a SQL injection. What is the 2021 OWASP top 10 classification for this vulnerability? This is one I'll let you guys research and do yourself. What does the nmap report as the service and version that's running on port 80? We can go back to our nmap here, and it was this. So service and version is Apache HTTPD 2.4.38. We go back, you can see that here, and it's running Debian. What is the standard port used for the HTTPS protocol? This isn't something that was covered on the box, but this is 443. So this should be common knowledge in whenever you're doing anything port related. 443 is HTTPS, and as we saw, port 80 is just HTTP. So 443 is secure, 80 is not. What is a folder called in web application terminology? This isn't really stuff we covered in the video. I'm not sure why they're asking it in this particular box, but we can. I'll let these questions sort of be answered by you guys. I don't want to give these away because we didn't exactly do them in the box, so I don't feel it doesn't feel appropriate here to be answering these questions. Same thing here. What's the HTTP response for not found? I feel like that doesn't really make sense here. GoBuster. We didn't use GoBuster. Here we go. What single character can we use to comment out the rest of a line in MySQL? That is the hash. I'm not sure if the hash is the right terminology for that. Like it's a hashtag or a pound symbol or like a number symbol, whatever you want to call it. But a hash is what comments out the rest of the line in MySQL. And you can even do that MySQL comment. And you said it supports three types of comments. So we have the hash, we have the dash dash, and we have the multi-line. So for proof of concept, and because I'm curious, let's do admin dash dash with a space and see if we still log in. And yeah, so that still works as well. So any of the MySQL comments will work in this scenario. If the user input is not handled carefully, it could be interpreted as a comment. Use a comment to log in as admin without knowing the password. And so it sort of gives us the hint here that the username is admin. There is a way we can authenticate without knowing the username, but I'll cover that in a different video. What's the first word found on the web page? This is congratulations. And then we have our root flag, which we found here. And that is the box. So like I said, a very quick box and a very quick breakdown on what SQL injection is. But the main takeaway I want you all to understand here is this is what's running on the back end, or some form of this is running on the back end. This is our payload. And the main thing you need to worry about is the comment here and the single quote here. So the single quote breaks out of the input box, and then the comment comments out the rest of the line. So we manipulated the SQL statement in order to authenticate us without knowing the password and just knowing the username. And that's all we have for appointment. Next week, we're going to be taking on SQL. So it's very possible that this box deals with a similar thing with the SQL query language. We will see. But until then, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you learned something. Hope you have a fantastic day, and I'll see you next week. Happy hacking.